Hi, I'm Kyle Springer, Haskel Systems Product Manager at Airline Hydraulics. Today we're going to be talking about the Haskel 1/3 horsepower pump series, where I'm going to give a step-by-step tutorial on how to rebuild the pump and replace its seals. This tutorial applies to the entire series, including the MS 29723 liquid pumps, as well as the HAA series air amplifiers. And if you find this tutorial to be helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay tuned for more great videos from Airline. The Haskel 1/3 horsepower pump series is the most economical pump series in the Haskel lineup. They are small, inexpensive pumps, great for any application where you need to hold and maintain pressure. If flow is important to your application, you'll need to look to a larger pump in Haskel's product line. But if you just need to get to pressure and hold that pressure, this pump is a great solution. Typically with this series, you'll get 2,500 hours of operation on a set of seals. After that point, you'll eventually start to notice some trouble maintaining pressure, and eventually you may even spring a leak in the pump. Also, any liquid seen coming through the muffler of the air drive section is a sure sign of seal failure. If you wait too long and run your pump on bad seals for a while, you'll start to damage the metal components inside the pump. And unfortunately, at that point, you'll have no other option but to replace the pump. Luckily, this pump series is inexpensive, so you can find a replacement for around $800 at list price. But if you're proactive with fixing your pump, you have a few other options. You can take it to a Haskel repair center, where the repair price will be around $400, or you can buy the seal kits for under $200 and rebuild the pump yourself. To me, the most cost-effective solution is to replace the seals yourself. And if you follow this tutorial, you'll find it's fairly easy and you'll be up and running in no time. First, you need to order the seal kits for your pump. You can buy them online at Airline's website, www.airlinehyde.com. Just type in the name of your pump in the search bar, select your pump, and scroll down to find its seal kits. There may be multiple seal kits required for your pump. Check your assembly drawing or check your model number on our website to see which seal kits and how many are required. Another thing you'll need is a detailed drawing of your pump, which is going to be extremely helpful during the rebuild. You can also find this on our website by searching and selecting your pump, scroll to the Links tab, and click the link for the assembly drawing. I recommend you print the drawing and have it next to you during the rebuild. Once you have your seal kits and drawing, you'll need a few more tools for the rebuild. You'll need safety glasses, some gloves, a bar clamp, wrenches, a socket set, screwdrivers, and a set of picks. You can see I have a clean work area with the pump, tools, drawing, and seal kits within arm's reach. I find it's good practice to open all the seal kits before getting started, but keep all the components in their individual bags. There are a lot of different O-rings, and we don't want to get them mixed up. So let's get started. Today I'm going to be rebuilding the Haskel MS 110 pump, but this process applies to the entire 1/3 horsepower series, including the M and 29723 liquid pumps, as well as the HAA air amplifiers. So we're ready to start tearing this pump apart. You'll notice before I started, we've match marked the upper air barrel, the lower pump section, and the air barrel in the middle. This just helps us make sure everything's lined up when we put it back together. First step is going to be taking off this muffler assembly. So I'll need a screwdriver to do that, and we'll remove the 4 screws holding this on. Make sure we keep track of the order these come off in so that we can get them back in the right order when we reassemble the pump. And we'll remove the lower one. So now that we have the muffler removed, we're just going to loosen the inlet and outlet check valve assemblies, but not remove them yet. This just helps it's easier to get these loose when the pump is fully assembled. So now we have to take the tie rods off and pull this pump apart. Now the M series pump and MS series pump is a spring return pump. So there's a return spring in here we have to deal with. To do that, we'll use the bar clamp and clamp this over the pump to hold it together while we pull the tie rods out. So we're going to clean up all of our pieces and put them up with our parts. So now we're ready to relieve tension on the pump. Do this slowly and as controlled as possible because there is a lot of spring tension in the pump itself. So here we have the base plate, the pump section, the return spring, and our upper housing. Now we're ready to address the upper pump head. We'll move the liquid section out for now. So first thing we'll do is remove the air drive barrel. Set that aside and we'll pull our plunger assembly out. This is a combined liquid section plunger and the air drive plunger. Here we'll inspect the liquid plunger for any metal to metal wear. You'd see scoring on here that would indicate that the seal set wasn't replaced in the proper time. If you see any metal to metal wear, you may really want to consider just buying a new pump. Here we're ready to remove the pilot stem vent and the spool and sleeve assembly from this upper air cap. So first step, we'll remove the cycling spool and the sleeve. We'll use one of the picks and pry that out of the head. Once it's out, you can separate the cycling spool from the cycling spool sleeve. So now we're going to remove the pilot stem assembly, which is accessed through this port here. Remove this port plug, set it aside, and remove the spring, pilot stem, and set them aside. Now we'll remove the pilot stem packing with our picks. There's 3 components in here that we need to get out. We have an O-ring, the seal tube, and the small washer underneath it. That completes the disassembly of the upper head assembly. So we'll start with pulling the seals off this head assembly. We've already pulled the valve stem seals out, and now we can pull the barrel seal off. You can set all these O-rings aside because we'll be replacing them. So now we'll also remove this inner O-ring, which is picked out through this opening. You can set all these O-rings aside because we'll be replacing them. You can also replace the O-ring on this plug as well. We'll set that aside and we'll keep those 2 parts assembled together. So now we're going to put the fresh seals back into this upper air head. Before reinstalling any of the O-rings, use the grease supplied in your seal kit. Lightly put it on your fingers and lubricate the O-rings before reinstalling them in the pump. So first we'll reinstall this O-ring back into the head. It fits in an internal groove in here, so it has to be carefully worked in by hand and then set into place in the groove. Good. Now we'll install the outer O-ring that seals the air barrel. Now we'll install this cap O-ring, which also retains this metal plate on the unit. Now we'll install the pilot stem vent seals, starting with the small green seal, press down to the bottom, then install this flow tube, and then we install the upper O-ring, the pilot stem, the pilot stem spring, and we replace the plug that retains all of these components in the bore. You want to make sure that the metal plate covers the hole in the center of the pump body and snug down this plug screw. There, we're done with the seals on the upper airhead assembly. Now we'll reseal the cycling spool and the cycling spool sleeve. There's 3 O-rings that need to be removed on the spool sleeve and 2 O-rings that need to be removed on the spool itself. We'll use a pick to carefully remove these O-rings. So we've removed all 3 O-rings from the cycling spool sleeve, and we'll remove the 2 O-rings from the cycling spool itself. Now we'll reinstall the O-ring seals back on the spool. And the other O-ring on the other side of the spool. And we'll also install the O-rings on the cycling sleeve. These can be tricky to get on, and you want to make sure that you don't roll the O-rings while installing them. If you roll the O-rings, they won't seal properly in the head. You can use a pick to help get these back where they need to go. Now we can install the cycling spool back into the sleeve. Once we have these 2 components resealed and lightly lubricated with the Haskel lubricant, they're installed back in to the air cycling head. And we can set that aside. Alright, so now we'll replace the seals on the plunger assembly. There's 2 O-rings that need to be removed and replaced on this assembly. After the new O-rings are lightly lubricated, we'll reinstall them on the plunger assembly. And that completes the reseal of the plunger assembly. So now we're going to work on the liquid section. We'll start with removing the outlet check valve assembly. We need to be careful here because there's lots of small parts that need to be kept in the correct order. We'll remove this fitting, which contains all of the check valve components. We want to take care to keep all of these in the correct order. In the base of this port is the check valve seal, which we'll need to pick out and replace from our seal kit. So now we'll remove the inlet check valve assembly, which will give us access to the actual plunger seals on the pump. Again, we need to take care when we're taking these apart to keep all of the internal components in the correct order. If they do get mixed up, you can reference the drawing you've printed out for their proper reassembly. So we have the standoff tube and then the check valve components. And also in the base of this fitting is where the other check valve seal is that we need to replace. And set it aside. The last two components to remove from the pump head are the main plunger seal and the plunger bearing. These can be picked out after the inlet check valve has been removed. And that completes the disassembly of the pump head. So, once you've cleaned the pump head assembly, we're ready to reinstall the bearing and the main plunger seal. The bearing has a chamfer on it, which goes down when it is being reassembled. The plunger seal has a flat side and a grooved side. The flat side goes down when it is assembled as well. You can use the flat side of the plunger seal you removed to safely press the new seal down into place. Next part of the fluid section repair is to reassemble the inlet check valve assembly. We'll start by removing the old O-ring that seals this to the pump body and replacing it with a new O-ring that came in the seal kit. Make sure you lubricate the check valve assembly O-rings before installation. So first thing we'll do is we will replace the check valve seat from the inlet check valve. The inlet and outlet check valve seat are slightly different sizes. Use the assembly drawing and bill of material to ensure you're installing the proper seat on the proper check valve. And then we can gently use one of our picks to make sure that that check valve seat is just pushed to the bottom of this fitting. Now we need to reassemble the check valve ball, the ball spring, the keeper, ring, and additional spring into the check valve. We hold these upside down and set the check valve assembly over top. When these are in the check valve assembly, we add the standoff tube and check that everything moves freely. We can also see that the check valve ball is seated at the bottom of the inlet fitting. Well, now we'll reinstall our inlet check valve assembly into the pump head. So carefully hold all of the components in the check valve we just put together and reinstall the inlet check valve into the pump head. This can be tightened down hand tight for now. To repair the outlet check valve assembly, first we'll replace the sealing O-ring from the outside of the fitting. And we'll replace that with the new O-ring from our seal kit. Now we're ready to reassemble all of the outlet check valve components. First, we'll start by reinstalling the check valve seat in the pump head. And we'll use a pick to make sure that is seated at the bottom of the port. To reassemble all of the outlet check valve components, we'll start by placing them into the outlet check valve fitting. Once these components are in order, we'll very carefully insert this back into the pump head. Hand tighten this outlet fitting at this point. And that completes our rebuild of the pump section. Now we're ready to start reassembling all of the major pump components back into a completed pump assembly. Here we'll start with the pump head assembly. We'll add our plunger assembly, and over top of those we will carefully install the air drive barrel. Once we have that installed, we'll realign our alignment marks on that assembly. Now we're ready to get the pump assembly ready to mate back to the air drive assembly. We'll place the air drive with our match mark facing up and the pump assembly with its match mark facing up here. Now we'll take the return spring, put it in the return spring seat in the pump head, and mate that up with the return spring seat in the plunger assembly. So we need to remember to reinstall our lower tie rod plate, which has a pin that engages the pinhole in the pump head. Now we're ready to use our bar clamp to clamp this unit back together to be reassembled with the tie rods. So we will carefully line up our bar clamp with the two halves of the pump assembly and start putting tension on the assembly until the plunger enters the hole in the pump section. From here, we can continue to compress the pump assembly until both halves are mated together again and our match marks are aligned. Now we can assemble our tie rods, installing all four of them hand tight before removing the bar clamp. Don't forget to reinstall the brackets on the bottom side of the pump. Now that all four of these tie rod bolts are tight, we can remove clamp pressure and continue to tighten them to the torque spec that's shown on the assembly drawing. With our pump reassembled, we're now ready to reinstall the exhaust muffler. This goes back on in the order it came off. The muffler clips in, and the upper muffler cap also retains the cycling spool and cycling spool sleeve. We've now completed assembly of this Haskel MS110 pump, and we are ready to test pressure and flow output from the pump. So that's it. You now know how to replace the seals on Haskel's 1/3 horsepower pump series. After you replace the seals, you should get another 2,500 hours of operation before you need to replace them again. If you have any questions about this tutorial, just type them in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to Airline's YouTube channel to stay current with helpful videos posted every week. Thanks for watching.